Today's artwork was something I had wanted to create for quite some time. It's a bit longer than usual, and I try to explain each step and what it takes to create this kind of advanced photo manipulation. Let me know if you'd like this longer format for the future. I had an overall idea how I wanted the image to look, but nothing concrete. I figured things out as I went. I knew I wanted this part from the door, so I cut it out, then I duplicated it to make it more tall. To achieve that, I stretched it in perspective and masked up other parts out, and fixed the parts that looked off with the clone stamp. For this one, I hadn't really planned each and every step, so you'll see me trying things out sometimes. And it will do the job. I brought in this long hallway and tried to work with it at first, but after a while I scrapped the idea and went for another image here. That's how it is sometimes. It's a bit better to find the right stocks for the job than to try to fight a lost cause, so to speak. I had an overall idea how I wanted the image to look, but nothing concrete. I figured things out as I went. I scrapped the first idea and went for another image here. This wall I could use, but I wanted it to be straight, so I warped it accordingly. And like I said, as I went, I was looking for inspiration and parts that I would want to use, so I'm trying things out here. I grabbed the wall part and the floor. At this point, I try to lay out my composition. I tried to warp this part at first, but then decided to just duplicate the other part. I'm trying to see what works out here and lay out my composition in my imagination. I finally decided the placement of the background, and I needed to build out the ceiling, keeping the perspective in mind. To fill out the right side of the floor, I duplicated the other side. The ceiling was a bit too bright, so I darkened it up in the appropriate places. Then I had to match the foreground with the background in terms of light values and in terms of color. Keep in mind guys, that things further away are less in contrast and brighter, and objects close up are darker and have more contrast. But here, things are not great distances away, so it plays less of a role in this artwork. I brought down the saturation a bit, because it was too much. Also with color balance, I gave the foreground a bit more blue and cyanish tones, so it matched with the background. And I quickly cleaned up the selection here. The left wall looked a bit off, so I darkened it up with levels and tried to match the color with color balance again. Here I drew with the soft round brush in a circle to darken the background up. Let's include our main focal points. Inspired by Stranger Things, I chose this creature. And as an opposing element, a soldier. By the way, I got this asset from Envato Elements. With curves, I adjusted the light value of the soldier. My goal here is always to make the elements look like they are part of the composition. The same goes for the coloring. I know that the scene I chose has many blue and red and also cyanish tones, so it makes sense that the soldier would have it also. I like to go overboard with the color grading at first, and then simply bring the opacity down. The same rule applies to the monster, some blue, some cyan, and so on. And without anything else, they already look much more integrated. Basically, the steps of blending images are adjusting the light and dark values, then color grading, and then establishing the contact shadows and the lighting. That's what I'm always doing here for each element. Next I drew the contact shadow, directly where the feet touch the ground. And while we are at it, I drew the ambient shadow on the same layer, which makes everything look more realistic. Ambient shadow would also be on his feet itself, so I included that. After that, I drew the darker spots on his body, estimating the light source's directions. I knew the portal, which we will make next, will light him up from behind, so he would be darker in front of his body. Also, there's no shame in adjusting and looking what looks good to you. Many things that I do here are artistic choices, and everyone has their own taste when it comes to that. Next is including the direct light that would fall on the creature. So I drew that on an inverted exposure layer. The light color is bluish of course. For that I created a hue saturation adjustment and copied the same mask from before. For the soldier, I used the same hue adjustment layer but set it to linear dodge blend mode. Our next focal point is the upside down portal in the background. For that I had some images and textures ready. Of course, the vines are an integral part of that. I found this Ivy PNG that I think could work. The adjustment layers that I already had worked perfect, so I didn't really do them again. Here's a neat trick that I learned. To make things look wet or slimy, I duplicated the root, converted it to a smart object, and then went to filter gallery. Then you just go to plastic warp and play with the adjustments until you have something that looks like water or slime reflections. That basically does the trick. Then you clip the copied layer on top of the roots and just brighten up the bright parts with levels until you get the wanted effect. Then if you want to take away the darker parts and only leave the bright reflections, you can do that with Blend If. Next up, I could draw the shadows for the roots manually, but I took a shortcut. I copied the roots and decreased the fill to 0, and then gave it a drop shadow. That way we have quick contact shadows, which will take us a long time to do manually. With that, the upside down roots are basically finished, so we can work on the gate next. This is of course where the roots will come out from. We can mask out the roots so it gives the effect of emerging right out of the gate. Next I feathered the mask out a bit to make it look more natural. Then I shaped the gate a bit more organically, if you will. In the show, the gate had an orange glow around the edge, so I replicated it with auto glow. We want the gate to be glowing, so with the soft round brush I made it bright yellow in the middle. The roots will be lit up around the gate, so we can do that with a colorful layer. I also went back to adjust the shape of the gate a bit. I thought this image here could fit well, so I clipped it to the gate. I tried out different blending modes to see what looks good, until I ended up on soft light. Then I did the same with another layer, with an abstract background image. This time on linear dodge. And then I brought down the opacity a bit. By the way, you can download the finished PSD file and all the assets and brushes I used. Already the gate looked pretty nice, but I used another abstract background image, this time set to screen. And for the last final touch, I inverted an exposure layer and revealed it with white in the middle, to make a brighter spot on the gate. and I made it a bit larger, since it's an important focal point in our image. With that, I think our upside down gate looks pretty decent. I didn't like the light of our background, since it distracted a bit from the gate. Since the gate is one of our main focal points, we don't want anything else to distract from that. So I just copied a part of the background and fixed some areas with the clone stamp. And now we have to change up the blue light on the right side of the creature to red and then complete the highlights. Somehow it didn't record that part, but I simply added some light beams that comes out from the gate. Then I gave the soldier the red light reflections as well. And to give our big guy some friends, I dropped in a few little guys to fight off the soldiers alongside with him. To not start from scratch, I just duplicated the adjustment layer from the big guy for the small doggos. And then I added the highlights and contact shadows for all the other elements. I speed this part up a bit since it's the same procedure. Then I also had to give the soldier some friends, so I dropped them in and completed the same steps as before, adjusting the brightness levels and highlights. Since this doggo is attacking in the air, I gave him some motion blur. Then I included muzzle flashes for the gunshots. And for the bullet effect that I'm doing here, you can simply draw a line, then give it an outer glow, and then a bit of motion blur. Here I just blurred out the muzzle flashes a bit with path blur. Then I also added some smoke to the muzzle flashes and copied it for each soldier. for the final touches, I added some atmospheric effects to the scene. And with that, we are basically finished. I merged everything in one layer and went to Camera Raw. Here I just try different things out and see what looks good to me. You can just copy my settings if you want. Here I just went back to adjust some shadows on the soldiers. And with all that, here is our final upside down inspired artwork. If you watched till here, thank you so much guys. Please leave a like and subscribe to stay tuned for more content in the future.